Good morning. On behalf of Blair Williams, the gallery owner, myself, I'm Chelsea, and the rest of the staff here at the Art Spirit Gallery, we appreciate you coming in for our April opening, our show called Introspective. We're featuring 4 artists, 2 of whom are here. We'll get into an interview with them as well here really soon. We've got a brand new idea upstairs, a new featured artist. We haven't met him in person. He goes by the name of Dan, so I want to invite you to check that out as well. So a couple of things. We have, what I want to say, we're on live on Facebook, so Michael is back there managing that. So we usually get about 100 people plus tune in for that, so that's wonderful. And then we have kind of a smaller, intimate audience here. So on that note, I'm going to go ahead and introduce, I'm nervous today, I'm usually not that nervous, but it's so formal today. So we have Andrew Parker and Hanna Kuhns, and so we welcome back Andrew. Hanna has not been here yet for a show, so it's really exciting to have you in. The other 2 artists that are part of the show are not here. Michael Haken is also a brand new artist. He's, I believe, in Montana at this time, so we hope to see him later, maybe in time for Art Walk, which comes up in another week or so. The other artist is Nick DeVries. So the beautiful ceramics, you may have seen those throughout the years. We've had many of his pieces, and he just sent us another shipment, and so we have those throughout the gallery as well. So it brings a lovely elegance to the show. So the show's title is Introspective, and it came off of a conversation with Andrew, actually. So when we were talking about trying to line him up for the show and kind of find out where he was going with his artwork, I believe it came off, that's how I remembered it, but it came off a conversation with you and some of the themes that you might be working in for the next year of work. So I'm going to start with that. Introduce yourself, tell our audience who may not know you, who you are, what your medium is, and just briefly about the technique of your medium. And then we'll go to Hanna and do the same thing.
Andrew Parker, I live in Spokane. I'm an architect and an artist. And so my work are the one that's on the blue wall and the one right here actually. So very geometric, and there's a lot of layering of paper, kind of utilizing tools from architecture school and architecture practice with found papers. And so these are all built on a wood panel with white museum board that's glued to that. And then there's a grid, and we kind of build up the layers of circles and papers and things from that grid.
Great. And we're sharing microphones, so I'll remember to project. Hanna, you please.
All right, my name is Hanna Kuhns, and I make abstract prints and abstract art. So for the past several years, I've been experimenting with printmaking and using printmaking tools in non-traditional ways. So the work is very abstract, as you'll see, in the show.
Okay, so let's jump off of that now, a little bit deeper into the technique part of that. So you're doing, your work is totally new to me, so like I've seen your work, of course, but the technique is definitely fresh. And also, what I want to find out more about is the character that's behind some of your work. I don't know much about that, so could you start by talking about that?
Sure.
Okay.
Yes, I would love to speak to that.
Yes.
So my work, again, like I said, it started out as an experiment with printmaking tools in this abstract way, and I started over time to build a language to really get comfortable in using this language to create the work. And I've had 2 ideas in this work that's shown today, and you said you wanted to hear about this character.
Sure.
Yes, okay. So something that fascinates me is this idea of people who live life to the fullest, and why. And how do those people who live this life to the fullest, they go after their dreams, how do they get there? And there are people that we all know that are able to do that in some way. However, a lot of people are held back by fear, doubt, worry, and that can stop them from those dreams. And so I kind of thought of who would embody this idea of living life to the fullest, and I came up with this idea of a character named Rhonda. And Rhonda is maybe a little bit rowdy. She has the most fun in a very good way. And so she kind of just started showing up in my work. I really love this idea of Rhonda is seizing the day. she's this idea of carpe diem embodied in a person. Yeah, the embodiment of carpe diem. So I just had fun with thinking of that idea and thinking of living life to the fullest. Oh, Rhonda's out there, she's doing it. Yeah.
So how does it show in the work? Like, because your work's abstracted, so it's not like, you're not doing a portrait, you know, as an example of a person. You're embodying that person while you're making the artwork. Is it about the storytelling of that person when you create a piece? Tell me a little more about that.
Yes. I would say it's not me embodying that person.
Okay.
It's the energy of that person and the idea of that person, the energy that that person is in the world, and the motion and the feeling of that person. When I make work, it's very active. You'll see the mark making is really a part of me and who I am as an active person in the world. I love skiing, adventure, rock climbing, and to make my work, it's physical. I print by hand, and the mark making really is energetic, and that's how I think of Rhonda.
Okay,
Yeah.
so more about your print process then. Are you working off of plates? Are you working off of, tell me more about that, because I really don't know about it. So how do
Sure.
you get from this to, for example, the piece that's right here closest to us?
It's varied. So like I said, I'm using many different printmaking tools. Often it's a monoprint. So I'm working from a plate, from large plexiglass, creating marks, hand printing.
Okay.
Yeah. Some of my pieces start with an acrylic wash, and you'll see the marks on several pieces along the wall in the back. You'll see the marks as they've dried with this nice, lovely, crisp edge, really resembling the way watercolor would dry on paper. Yes.
Nice.
Layers.
Okay. Yeah, it helps me understand a little bit more about that. Printmaking is a complex medium. It really
Yes.
is, and there are so many different tools and ways to do it. So much to learn about it. So, okay, so in contrast, so the character is coming through that motion, that idea. So maybe it's less precise in a way. There might be spontaneity in the work. Is that where the lack of fear would be playing in, to just go for it and not overthink it? Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely.
Okay.
It's a dialogue with the work. The layer is made, and sometimes I think about that layer for, it has been up to a year that I've thought about what comes next after that layer.
Oh.
But it is very active when the process is happening.
When you step back into that particular space of that piece.
Yes,
Okay,
yes.
interesting. So with your work, I would say it's a little more precise, and maybe precise isn't the right word, because you have a spontaneous approach as well to the underlayment of the pieces that you have. So how would you describe your process?
Yeah, there's a lot of sketching. So I brought a lot of sketchbooks, and underneath the large piece of the blue wall, there are, I guess, the next step post sketchbook, where I've taken some of those ideas that I like the most from the sketchbook, and I've done them slightly larger. And those ones actually correspond to the piece that's at the back of the gallery, and not the one specifically on the blue wall. So just looking at kind of color and composition and elements that are, to me, kind of harken back to specific areas of the Northwest that I feel like we've spent a lot of time in. So having gone to school in Montana and grown up in Oregon and spent time on the West, on the coast, and just driving back and forth, kind of the landscape forms and the colors of different seasons, a lot of those start to make their way into the sketchbook. And conceptually, the paper that's used kind of as that base layer is often also related to either the location or kind of the color scheme or the concept of the piece itself. And so, for example, this one, the paper is primarily privacy envelopes and paper grocery bags. And so both have an interesting texture. You'll never look at privacy envelopes the same again. But interesting texture on both. The color kind of corresponds with the earthy tones that I was going for. And then conceptually, I think using materials that are so readily available. I'm sure we probably all have both of those at home right this very moment. And then as this is kind of an attractive landscape, thinking of the privacy envelope or the security envelope as something like stone-like, and thinking of questions of security and privacy as it relates to a natural environment.
What's the title on this piece behind us?
Forks in the path.
Forks in what?
Forks in the path.
Forks in the path. Okay.
So kind of moving through space, and not specifically intentionally, but each piece is kind of come to represent a very specific, not specific location, but kind of a general area.
General idea. Yeah, I think you were describing the large piece that came in, and that was inspired by car trips. Like
Yeah,
that
between
before.
Spokane
Yeah.
and Bozeman. My wife and I went to school in Bozeman, and she's from Spokane. Gets car sick in the car, and so she always drives, and I get to sit and draw pictures, which is great. And so there's just a lot of memories of more than a decade of making that drive back and forth, and the colors throughout the season, and the forms, and then just some of the various details. And if you look at it closely, you'll see references to roadways and signs and.
Well, and the horses.
Yeah,
I think we were all
horses, yeah.
surprised to see, there's usually not a representational figure of any sort in your work, so that was really kind of pleasant. And it's subtle, so it's, it kind of reminded me, and I may be totally off on this, but it's kind of the idea of the Western subject matter of art, with horses and landscape, but not in a traditional portrayed Western painting, which it just seems really fun. Kind of contemporary Western in a way.
Yeah, which is kind of something I want to explore, and I want it to feel natural without being a landscape. And so, how do you achieve that? But how do you also incorporate all of the some of the history and the depth and the complexity that is physically and kind of metaphorically within the site itself. So the papers in that one there are maps and travel guides. There are newspaper clippings and various elements like that.
So you
Tree
the papers
field
to start the
guides.
story. That's wonderful. Okay, so going a little bit off of those ideas that you just talked about, Hanna, with the pieces that you have here in this particular setting or this show, can you talk a little bit about the work as a whole? Is there, what should we know about it? What would we like to know about it? Or what do you want us to know about it?
Sure.
Yeah.
So I've already mentioned Rhonda. That's very important. So now you'll know a little bit about her. She's in part of the work, and that was one idea that you see today. The other idea is a little more serious, but also it's great. It's this idea, there's a word in German called Sehnsucht, and it's this idea that, and you're saying, yes, I know this word. Yeah. It's this idea that you have this desire to go back to what was once a place or a moment in time, and you can never go back to that. You can't. It was that place for the moment, and it changes over time, just as we're seeing this area change. We can't go back to how it was last year. And I have thought a lot about that in the work. There's several pieces you'll see here that relate back to my time living in Germany. I was born in Germany, and I went back there as I was older. I met my husband there, and I often think about places that I want to return to, and I can't return there. I can't return back to that moment. And so the pieces that I have in this show represent the feeling of that space and that time, that place and that experience. And so you have to read the titles of the pieces that I've put in the show to understand more of that. Yeah.
Is it clear by looking at the titles whether it was Rhonda inspired or not?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, you'll see Rhonda's summer mix back there. Rhonda rides the T-bar. She's really into skiing. I love skiing too, so.
I have a question for you. Do you come up with the title first and then the piece is derived from the title, or do you create the piece and then the title follows?
That's a great question. It's both.
Okay.
Yes. I think the place inspired pieces, back to the idea of Sehnsucht, is really more inspired from the beginning. And Rhonda, she's very energetic, and so yeah, it's a great question though. Yeah.
What about the pieces with the gilded frame or the gold frame? I love this one in particular.
Thank you.
Anything in particular for you as far as designing it that way, displaying it that way? Is it just strictly a commercial idea?
Well, I don't see Blair. Actually, it was years ago. I was chatting with Blair about making modern work. That's the work I make. And Blair suggested it would be really great to see a juxtaposition of modern work with this ornate frame. And I filed that away, and I thought about that, and I stumbled upon these frames, and I thought, you know, let's go for it. Let's give it a try. So I really have to give Blair credit for that.
Love that. That's great. It's a different setting. It would work in a lot of different settings. It feels museum oriented to me. I just love it.
Thank you.
Great.
Thank you.
Okay, so maybe the same sort of question. Is there a particular theme that came off of the new works that you brought us? I believe it was 4 new works. And then we mostly just showed just your new works for this show. Normally we'll try and put a lot in. We restrained ourselves with this show and did not bring up everything that we have in our inventory. But maybe talk about if there's a contrast between the recent pieces to what we've seen before.
Yeah, I think there's a good example on just down here on the wall by the front desk, where it's much more saturated. So it's like orange, yellow, pink. So it's much brighter. There's a lot more kind of movement going into it, and it feels much less landscape-like than these four new pieces. And so it's not the first time that I've done kind of the landscape-esque style, and I find myself kind of alternating back and forth between fairly saturated and colorful pieces and more muted earth tones. But as I guess as I move the earth tone kind of natural pieces forward, especially, I find that I'm bringing more color kind of into those, and even though that color's a little bit more muted than maybe that bright red one, that I feel like has brought a little bit more life to the natural tones. Kind of made those more interesting. So go back.
So what ideas do you have now after starting down this path, this series? Will you completely do a 180, go a different direction, or go back the other way, or do you have some fresh things that you're inspired to work towards?
Yeah, I built a new panel this morning. That's what I was doing before I came out here, and it will probably be in the green brown tone as well, and kind of continue to explore that. I find I've been trying to paint like, I don't know, the wet kind of spring winter of Northwest Washington, and have struggled with like that intense green. So that's what I'm.
Yeah, the browns kind of underlay that. It's a unique green depending on where you go.
Yeah, it's either
it might be in the
like
woods
vibrant green, and then it's kind of too much, and I don't know, too much green.
Yeah.
So.
Okay, so from there, let's just touch a little bit on your, a little bit more where you are at this time, because you both work, you both have other careers, so you're not just 100% full-time artists in that way. So I think that's always important to share a little bit about that, and where you might be going in the future, and then we'll open up to questions from the audience. They probably have a lot of great questions. So you want to start on this one, Hanna? Just what else you do and.
Sure, what else I do?
What else you do?
Yeah, I am a high school art teacher, and that is the greatest job. I get to be surrounded by amazing creative people all day, and it's been such a gift to work in that capacity with amazing people. So that's what I do during the day. And for what's next, I recently got to take my children back to Munich, to the place I was from, and I was at an exhibit there. It was an exhibit by Cy Twombly, and I was sitting in a room filled with his massive pieces. It was a series of his roses, and as I was sitting there, I just knew that what's next for me is working at a large scale. So that's where I'm headed. That's next, and I'm very excited about the work. I can't wait. And I know that's what's next for me. So
you do have some large scale pieces, which would have been, we could have filled probably the whole gallery. It would have been awesome to see that. So maybe in the future, just a one-woman show with all of those pieces. So really nice large scale works. Yeah. Okay. Can you
So I'm a licensed architect, and I actually sit next to and work with Jason back there, and I work primarily in higher ed and a little bit of K through 12. So that's kind of been my career for the past decade, and I came to architecture through an interest in art, and have kind have gotten back into art since we've been in Spokane. And I think I would echo Lila in terms of scale. So the one on the blue wall is the second largest piece that I've done, and it's fun to work at that size. The other thing that I would like to do, and I think you've done a good job of this, is multiple pieces at the same scale. So I think everything that I have on the wall is a different size, and so having multiple pieces done at the same scale, same size, kind of exploring the same ideas is kind of where I want to go.
Do you guys think that having your daytime job allows you to be more open with what you're making as far as artists go? So you may not think about, gee, I shouldn't make too many large pieces. I want to make a large piece. I'm going to do that. I'm not making small market-sized pieces necessarily. How does that work into your art process, if it does at all?
As an introvert, I really have no desire to sit for 3 days at an art market. I'm glad that they happen, but it's not what I want to do. So I like the making of the art for sure, and remodeled my studio space this past winter so that I have more wall area, specifically to kind of work on larger pieces. And I do think that having a career, having a day job helps alleviate the pressure of trying to do what sells.
You're making for yourself more,
Yeah.
perhaps, than you are for what somebody might enjoy or might want to see or place in their home. Yeah, how about you?
Yeah, I really feel that it gives me the freedom to be creative, take risks, and have fun. That really, truly is the best part of it for me, is being in the space when you're making the work and it's just so alive, it's life-giving, and it feels so good to make the work. And it's great to share it, but being in that space of making the work is just such a beautiful thing, and I'm grateful for that creative part of my life. Yeah.
What stops you from doing that, if it does? Is it you just can't get enough time to get there, or are there things that, have you learned to not put things in front of that?
Yeah, I'm juggling a lot of things in my life, work and family. My kids are in so many sports and events, and so I'm juggling all these things, but I am grateful for the time that I can set aside to create, and I'm looking forward to more of that in the summer. So.
Yeah, I would say actually, I would echo on the kids doing lots of things. Part of this many years ago now, but when I wasn't painting in this, I was trying to paint like a watercolor landscape, and couldn't. I didn't have enough time to do a portion of an acrylic painting or watercolor painting without being interrupted. And I had already come to abstraction through architecture school, so I find that there's a really good relationship between my architecture practice and abstract art interests, but specifically with some of the processes that has kind of been directly impacted by having kids and the inability to do one thing for a long period of time. And so it's a little bit hard to tell on these probably, but initially when I had these still, I was doing black watercolor circles, and I would start, or like dark gray, I would start at the top left and work my way across like you would read a page. And if I found that if I stopped even for half an hour, the ink would evaporate enough that the color would change, and you could see the change, which now would be potentially interesting, but at the time I wanted it to all be the same and didn't get there. And so then I intentionally started painting those circles sporadically, and so then whether I did 5 or I did 30, the color would change, and you wouldn't perceive a hard line where it changed, but it kind of created this natural variation across that single color.
So that pressure kind of opened up an idea in your mind to get what you wanted, but without adding the stress level. I can't do what I want to do. So yeah, that's awesome. Artists, of course, are very creative, and sometimes it's forced upon us, I guess, to be innovative. I guess that's wonderful. Okay, so I think that's all that I'm going to ask, but I'm sure there's some great questions from our audience here. So let's start. Chris?
I've got lots of questions, but I'll just start with one. For Hanna, so me being a little, the abstract type of work, a little foreign to me, I'm curious as to how you express emotion in a work like this. Is it, for you, is it about the actual physical motion and the strokes you're making, or do you have a planned pattern that you work toward? Is it kind of a process that I guess is not iterative, but it's organic in that sense? I mean, how do you go from this is this emotion of this is Rhonda, and I want Rhonda to be on this paper? Explain how that process works for you.
That's a great question.
Thank you.
And can I say, for the people that are viewing, Chris is he's a sculptor and an amazing artist and instructional engineer and all around amazing human. So I really appreciate the great question. It is really, sometimes I practice the motion and the movements that I'm going to make before they go onto the paper. So it's, like I said, it's very active, and I kind of don't really want people to watch me do it because it's a lot of motion. So I'm thinking through it, practicing through it, and the motion is hopefully showing up in the work, in the movement. And it's paired with color. And so the color is very important, paired with the action and the active motion that you see on the paper. And so that's how it comes together. And hopefully you can take a look at the pieces and the titles and catch a little bit of what I was going for. Yeah.
Do you listen to music when you move, or no? Pure movement.
That's a great question. It depends. Sometimes, yeah. Sometimes nothing. Silence. Yeah. If I've got to get it right. Yeah. One shot.
I have talked about that. Yes.
Oh, yeah.
I guess going off of that, is there is there lots of like, are you in like a creative act meditatively a lot before you're going to painting? Because it sounds like you're doing practice and prepping and like all that kind of stuff.
Or ritual,
Does
perhaps it starts
yeah,
in the mood.
I was like, it seems like, is there that you're going through like some ritual process when you're, do you think of it like that, or do you
To think on that, I haven't thought of it like that. But I have thought of getting into the mindset of being creative and having this open dialogue with the work and including that motion. So I think of the motion I want to make, and yeah, I rehearse it or think of it, and then often it's not exactly how I would have planned, but it's a surprise, and some of the pieces you'll see here today have been just fantastic to see come to life. Those moments of wonder. Whoa, yes, beyond what I had planned. So I hope that sort of answers your question. Yeah.
I was going to ask you, do you ever have a day where Rhonda is not living her best life? And if so, do you work through her potential pain, sorrow, sadness, whatever it may be?
You know, that's also a great question. I think the idea of Rhonda is this best life, yes. And I think of that because it's not necessarily always what I'm living. I sometimes, as a person, have those worries, fears, doubts that can hold me back. And so the work is me. It's there's this quote by Helen Frankenthaler. She said something to the effect of, there's this beautiful motion of the wrist that's connected to the head and the heart. And this piece of work looks like it's born in a minute. And I often think of that as I'm creating the work. And I'm the one creating it. I again, like I said, I have worries, fears, doubts that I'm working against. And I try to push those aside as I'm making the work, not let it stop me. So it's not necessarily, that's not embodied in Rhonda. That Rhonda's a separate idea. It's all good there. Yeah, but a little rowdy, like I said. So yeah, lots of fun.
Thank you.
Yes.
Chris.
One for Andy.
Yes.
So, you know, it's your work is so meticulous in a sense in that, but then on a lot of pieces there are these strokes of free movement, and I'm wondering if that's hard for you. You know, where you know they're so planned, and then you have these kind of free movements in there, whether it's you've pushed some very liquid ink or something. Do you have a fear of that freedom, or do you struggle with that, or is that easy for you?
I've gotten better at that. But here's a good example for you, Chris. There's an earlier piece that I did. It's not here, but it has this great black splatter paint in it, but I did the splatter paint a bunch of times on other paper, found the one I liked, traced it, and painted it onto it. So it looks like this nicely splattered piece on the piece, but it's very meticulously transferred and painted. But I have moved past that, and the orange pink piece back there, I've actually splattered onto the painting itself. But yeah,
Is it hard?
it is hard. Yeah, I've gotten, especially with the just dumping paint onto a piece like that. I've gotten better at starting looser. So even before there's a grid, oftentimes I'll come in with like a pencil or colored pencil and draw out the form or the movement or the composition that I kind of want to be in the piece. And then some of that is transferred over with like red lines, and you can kind of see some of that construction through that, and then the grid and the layers of circles, and then kind of finishing with some of those elements again. Some of them I do practice, like whether I do it with a colored pencil or something light on the piece first, or a piece of trace paper, and kind of like what do I want where. So I'll kind of play around with those a little bit, but.
Well, this is a good time to mention that you'll be back this month doing a bit of a demonstration. We have you scheduled, I believe.
Okay.
Yes,
Yep.
for
Demonstration.
Yes, it's a talk. It's a little bit more in-depth talk with
Okay.
you, and maybe I think you might have some samples or something. Have your notebooks again.
Yep.
So,
Yep.
yes. So we'll have that posted through email.
Being here in person, just
Yeah.
splattering paint on things.
Yeah.
Andrew, I do have to say, I love that moment in the pink piece. That is what caught my eye.
Mhm.
I was like, yes.
I mean, I
That's
do like that juxtaposition of the very, very kind of ordered, structured aspect, and then the kind of complete looseness. I think there's an architectural connection of designing to a structural grid, but also I don't know, socially and personally creating think of an organizing structure as both an opportunity to do more, but also confinement. So
Sub-constraints, otherwise it's
and forth.
way open.
Mhm.
For example, another artist has mentioned this, Michael Horswell, who most of you probably know. He may come up with a concept to begin his work, because or he might have parameters that guides the body of work, and that actually is freeing because it's not so wide open. And I'm paraphrasing, obviously that's kind of along those lines, but that sort of stuck with me when I talk about his work. That it's how do you decide what size to do? How do you decide what colors to choose? And he might have some of those in mind ahead of time, and it frees him up to work within that parameter. It sounds similar to that.
No, I definitely find that I make rules for myself as the painting progresses, and like, oh, if I've done this color or this type of line or circle or something in this layer, then as I'm doing other things, every time I did that, then I'll do this. And because there are sometimes tens of thousands of circles in one of these, inevitably I will miss that on multiple occasions, and instead of going back, and when I finish that layer, that rule, instead of going back and fixing it and redoing it how I had done others, I'll circle it in red, or I'll paint it in a bright color so that it stands out.
How
It's
many
kind of
pieces
my way
have
of.
you created in this style of artwork? Do you know
I
how many
should count.
pieces? Ish, I guess.
Probably 50.
50 paintings, yeah.
Yeah, plus.
from the time you moved from the watercolor idea up to this, making up this, yeah. So what about you, Hanna? How many pieces do you have? You have quite a lot.
That's
So
a
you're pretty
great
prolific
question.
too.
I have quite a few pieces, and many of the pieces have been a process of learning my way of making marks and growing in that mark making. So yeah.
So you'll archive those perhaps, kind of stash those away?
Yes.
Yeah, that's part of your diary.
Yeah.
Yeah, excellent. Anybody? Yes?
Yeah, so following up on Hanna's discussion just now, how much of art is then having a vision and realizing exactly that vision? And how much of it is having a vision and then accepting that whatever you did is not exactly your vision, but you still liked it? How did you learn to love it?
So after this, we can look at the sketches that are on the bench back there, because the end sketch is what I was going for the piece that's at the very back, and you'll see they're still quite different. And so, I don't know, maybe the sketch will become another painting at some point, but it's a little bit of back and forth, at least for me. Sometimes I find that I'll have a very complete idea of what I want the whole painting to be, but more often than that, it's I like these 5 colors together, or this was an interesting texture, or I think there's a page in here that has a bunch of street signs on it.
Do you have anybody step in and help you? Does your spouse give you feedback, or there's that old phrase, it takes 2 artists?
Yeah, definitely sometimes, and especially as it gets close to the end, I think that's where I struggle. I mean, it's an abstract painting. When is it done? And I think like the pink and orange one has a lot more going on in it, and so it's kind of chaotic, and some of these feel a little bit quieter, and some feel there's still a lot in them, but she will definitely help decide when it needs something else, or not. So
I really love to leave room for surprise and wonder. And that's exciting to me in my work. So I also will speak with my husband. He's a potter and he has great feedback. And it's interesting because sometimes the pieces he really loves aren't the pieces I feel as strongly about, but we're a good team in that way. And the surprise and wonder is very important to me. It's very special, yes.
Any other questions? Yes?
For each of you, what do you listen to in your studios while you're working?
it varies quite a bit.
Music, podcasts, or what?
Yeah, all of the above. Recently freaking French, but yeah, quite a bit of podcasts and mellower music usually.
I listen to podcasts. I sometimes listen to financial podcasts, which is so funny. I just interested in that world, which is so opposite of what I'm doing. But just full transparency, yes. And I've been really, well, sometimes I listen to the throwback indie music of back when I was younger, and it's fun to reconnect with. Yeah, and sometimes it's just silence. I need silence when I'm really thinking through what I'm doing. Because sometimes I have one shot. I've built a layer, placed a layer, and I have one shot at a print, and I have to focus to get it, yes.
Where's your studio?
I'm working kind of all over, and I also, that is a good thing. Right now I'm writing a grant, and I'm looking for a more industrial sized space to create. It needs to have water, so if anybody knows of something. Yeah.
Studio with water.
Yeah, I need access to water, and it needs to be a pretty large space, especially if the grant I'm writing gets funded.
Yeah.
I need that.
There's in the gallery. There's been several people or people looking for studios again. So it seems to be there's some movement going on. So we need something.
Yes, that would
for
be
a number of artists currently.
Yeah,
so
that would be great.
yeah. Okay. Any last thoughts or questions? All right, well, thanks, you guys. So Introspective runs through the 29th, We will have Art Walk next week. I don't believe, or you were making it to Art Walk?
I'll be out of town.
Both of you, I think, were telling you next day.
I will be here that evening,
Okay,
yes.
great. So, another opportunity with a slightly different kind of mood, evening mood to see the show, walk around, ask questions. Nick DeVries is out there, he won't be here. Michael Hagen may pop in, I might have mentioned that earlier. Be great to meet him, and you guys have that in common that you're both from Germany, so that would be an interesting conversation to overhear. What else is important to mention? I think that's it for now. So thanks for coming in, guys, for this April show. And stay tuned into our Facebook page, Instagram, and definitely our emails if you want to know all the other things that are happening here. So it's going to be a busy month. This afternoon we have a wine walk, so there'll be a zillion people walking through getting wine and hors d'oeuvres today. So
Thank you.
great. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.